going on, guys? Your main man Zera here, bringing you guys yet another glorious review. We're going to be starting to talk about all the healers, starting today with the Dish Priest Artifact Weapon. We're going to do each one of the healers first. That way we get these guys pounded out, and then we'll do the tanks. That way the only thing that's going to be left is going to be DPS, okay? Because a lot of people are asking me specifically questions about tanks and healers. And I know more about tanks and healers than I do most of the other DPS classes, because I've only ever played one DPS class, but I played a lot of tanks, and I played a lot of healers. I haven't played all of them, I will say that, but they're easier for me to get a hold of, get a grasp on, and the rotations are a lot simpler. And it's a lot easier to dissect those and go more in depth and come up with different, unique ways to play them than DPS, because really, let's just be honest, aside from, the obvious things like, do you want to have throwing axes, a survival hunter, give you a little extra range, or do you want to take a snake hunter, which is going to put you right up in somebody's face? You know what I'm saying? Like, aside from those, obvious talent options, there's really only one way to play a class. It's how Blizzard's designed it. But healers and tanks, you can mix and match a couple things and get creative. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the Dish Priest. Now, Dish Priests, they are the kind of a new type of healer. I mean, Disc has always been able to do damage somewhat, and even Holy Paladins and so on, everybody else can do damage, but no one has ever been designed to do a bulk of their healing, or all of their healing almost, more than half their healing, through actual doing damage. And that's what's unique about the Dish Priest. Now, there's a thing to be said about the Fist-Weaving Monks, but, I mean, they've changed Mistweavers to be more of an actual healer. You can still do damage through healing, but, I mean, the entire design of Disc, from their artifact weapon, to their talents, to their honor talents, to, the rotation, and just the overall passives, even their passives and their spell book, are all about dealing damage and healing through damage. Atonement is the biggest, the most obvious statement Blizzard threw out there. So, hey, you're going to apply Atonement with, your powered shields, your pleas, powered radiance, and everything else. So, an Atonement is going to heal your targets that have Atonement on them. 40% of all damage you do is going to go to them for healing. And it's evenly spread. I mean, it's not like, this target over here gets like 5% of the damage, and this target over here gets the other 35% of the healing. No, like, every target with Atonement is going to get healed for the exact same amount, which is awesome, because this priest can really counter big burst damage in an AoE setting. Now, other healers have great AE, but their AE comes and goes, really. I mean, you've got Tranquility on a 2 or 3 minute cooldown, depending on which talent you take. Resto Shamans have their healing tide totems and their chain heals, so on and so forth, healing stream totem, but those are big cooldowns. As long as a Dish Priest keeps a totem on you, which is easy, guess what? All damage they do is going to heal every single target for the exact same amount at the exact same time. So, really unique design, really love this change, and I've tinkered with it for a few weeks, really love this healer. I even got my brother convinced that he's going to play Dish Priest now, and he actually tried to convince me to play one with him, to do double Dish Priest, because how awesome would that be? 2 healers actually doing damage and actually being able to change the pace of a fight through their damage, because Dish Priest can actually put us in deeps now, and I'll show you their primary ability right here in the very front row, their very first ability on Light's Wrath. Let's talk about it. What we got here is we got Light's Wrath, alright? It's named after the actual artifact weapon itself. It's a 90-second cooldown. Let's read what this bad boy does, alright? So it draws upon the power of Light's Wrath, dealing 700% spell power is radiant damage to the target. But it's increased by 10% in damage per target applied with Atonement. So essentially what that means is the more targets you have Atonement applied with, guess what? The more damage this thing can do. And it can do a lot of damage. We're talking, if you got, 10 or 12 people lined up with Atonement, this thing's going to hit for almost 1,500 spell power. I mean, that extra 10% per atonement can stack up really quick if you know what you're doing. Now the thing is that you don't want to use this all willy-nilly. This is not something you're going to just use, you know, as soon as it's off cooldown. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that you spread atonement. Obviously, you're going to be spreading atonement throughout the fight anyway, with, you know, your power word shield, your please, your power word radiance, or if you actually take Shadow Covenant, which replaces power word radiance. Unfortunately, your Shadow Covenant does not actually apply atonement like power word radiance does, but Shadow Covenant's cheaper than radiance, and it actually heals harder. So there's something to be said about that. But there's also a trick to that little toy, and I'll explain that in another video when we start talking about the actual talent choices, because the Disc Priest has a huge advantage in PvP over other healers, and we'll talk about that later. Alright, so our next one is going to be Invoke of the Light. Alright, so this is essentially going to be increasing the damage of Smite by 15%. Now, Smite is your primary damage dealer outside of your Shadow Word Pain or Purge of the Wicked if you take that talent, and then Penance. So, or if you decide you want to direct heal with Penance, which, again, we'll talk about that later when we start going over talents. You can play it any way you want. I personally prefer doing damage through Penance, because Penance can actually do a lot of healing with Atonement, and it actually heals more with Atonement if you think about it. With your damage from just Penance, you can actually heal everybody in an AoE area. Now, granted, Penance would heal harder on a single target if you're healing that one target, but you can get a lot more healing out through Atonement in an AE setting. But again, play it how you want. It's just a good idea to think about this. But Smite, this bad boy can hit and hit hard, especially if you play it right. Alright, so our next option is going to be, you know, Shield of Faith. This bad boy just increases the damage absorption by power word shield by 15%. Now this can be buffed to 30%. Now this is pretty dope. I actually really like this. And if there's a talent option called Grace that actually increases your power word shield and your absorption effects on all atonement targets by another 30%. So if you buff this by 30% and then you add Grace on top of it, your power word shield is going to have almost as much as, say, Clarity of Will. Now, Clarity of Will got nerfed a little bit, but it's still an enormous shield. It's almost 200,000 baseline damage absorb. Power word shield can actually absorb that much damage if you put all your relics into this slot, and then you take the Grace talent at the level 100 slot. So keep that in mind too. Alright, so now our next option is Sharing the Light. So Sharing the Light is going to allow us to, while casting power word shield on a target other than yourself, you actually gain 15% as much of a shield. So the thing about this is most people are the first thing they're going to ask you, like, oh, does that stack? Oh, does that keep building up? Here's the problem, is that power word shield has a 6-second cooldown. So by the time you actually apply this and the 6-second cooldown is over, that shield that you picked up from this is going to be gone. But what's nice about this is that if you have power word shield on yourself, this will actually stack with a power word shield. Now, obviously, you're not going to get this when you cast power word shield on yourself. It only procs if you proc it on other people. So you put a shield on yourself, and then you put shield on other people. This will proc on top of your shield. And as long as you just keep a shield up on yourself every, 15 to 20 seconds, this will actually keep happening. You know what I'm saying? But it's also nice to know that you can actually throw out power word shield on somebody else in the middle of a fight without having to feel guilty about not applying a shield on yourself first, because at least when you throw it on them, you'll have a little something to keep you safe from harm and danger, at least for a little while, waiting for that 6-second cooldown to come back. Alright, so here our next option is Darkest Shadows. This increases the healing done by Shadow Mend by 10%. Okay, so like the healing done by Shadow Mend by 10%, Shadow Mend is our biggest direct heal. There is just one downside though. It causes a dot on the target. Okay, so it causes a small dot on the target. Now the only time it would ever actually do that is when if the target you're healing is actually in combat. They're in there, they're getting it on real quick. If they're in combat, they do take a dot. But the thing is that the dot goes away if they take X amount of damage. So if they're in the heat of battle and they're taking shots while you're healing them with Shadow Mend, you really don't have to worry about it too much, because by the time they take that damage, it's going to go away pretty quick, because as long as they get pounded on. But there's also something else to think about this with Shadow Mend. If the target you're healing has a way to drop combat, like say you're in voice, or you're running a group or something through BGs or RBGs or even in the arena, if that target's getting low and they've got some way to drop combat real quick for 2 or 3 seconds, have them drop combat, hit 2 or 3 shadow mins real fast, and you don't have to worry about the dot, because as long as that target is out of combat, they won't take any damage. Alright, now our next option here is Burst of Light. Burst of Light's going to increase the healing done by either Shadow Covenant or Power Word Radiance by 15%. Now the thing of this is, like I said, this is going to depend on which talent you take. If you take Shadow Covenant, it's going to replace Shadow Word Radiance, but you can also stick with Power Word Radiance. It doesn't really matter. This is essentially your AE healing. Now Radiance applies Atonement to 3 targets, but Shadow Covenant does not. But Shadow Covenant heals 5 targets instead of just the usual 3. Now, as far as like which one does the more healing, I'd have to say that they're pretty even in that department. It's just that Covenant heals more than 3 players, but at the cost of not applying Atonement on the target. Now, you're going to say and probably think, well, isn't it better that it does apply Atonement? I mean, yes and no, but I mean, if you're in a situation where you're AE healing, you're most likely have already been there for a few seconds or even a minute or 2, and you've already got Atonement up on everything, so it doesn't really fit the narrative, especially in a dungeon or you know, in a raid where you're doing PvE content. If the fight's been going on for a while, trust me, everybody that's got Atonement has Atonement, and you're not going to be using Radiance to just spread Atonement, so that's not really its primary use. So that's why I really like taking Shadow Covenant, but again, we'll get into talents later. Our next ability, Power of the Dark Side. Alright, this ability is pretty awesome. It basically allows your Purge of the Wicked or Shadow Word Pain, whichever one you take, to have a chance to increase the damage dealt by Penance, or the healing done by Penance by 50%. Okay, so Penance is your primary direct damage or even direct healing, depending if you spec that way. Also, Shadow Word Pain and Purge of the Wicked are your primary dots that you're throwing out. Okay, so basically this means that every time you throw out a dot, your Penance is now going to have a chance to increase its damage or healing by 50%. So this is just really, really nice. I really love this. This stacked with other traits and other single target traits in here makes this artifact weapon really nice to have, and buffs like your primary heals. Okay, your primary means of healing again is through damage, and what you're going to see here is ways to channel abilities faster, increase the healing or damage done by these abilities. So like I said, there's multiple ways you can play this priest. You can be primarily just, you know, hitting people as hard as you can while spreading healing through your damage with Atonement, or you can be one of those guys that just dots things up, doesn't really try to do a whole ton of damage, and actually uses things like Penance or Shadow Covenant or other abilities that actually allow you to heal directly. So our next one is the Edge of Dark and Light. Alright, so this bad boy is going to increase the damage dealt by either Purge of the Wicked or Shadow Word Pain by 15%. So again, it's up to you guys, but these are your bread and butter. I mean, right here, this is your bread and butter. You can't go wrong with this. If you want to buff this with all 3 relics, it's up to you. This is your, you know, you're basically your only dot that you're going to have available. It's either going to be Shadow Word Pain or it's going to be Purge of the Wicked, depending if you choose that in the talents. But yet again, you got to remember that Atonement is going to be ticking as a heal every time these tick is damaged. So you can actually buff this to 30% and make those Atonement heals that much better. Our next one is Speed of the Pious. Alright, so the Speed of the Pious is going to increase your movement speed by 30% while channeling Penance. Okay, so while channeling Penance, right, you're going to be able to move 30% faster, as it suggests. So what this basically means is that, you know, there's one row in the talents, I can't remember, I think it's the level 30 tier, that you've got a couple options for mobility. There's Body and Soul, which is like a 40% movement speed increase on targets that you apply Power Word Shield to, and then there's, you know, Angelic Feathers. 3 charges as always, 20-second cooldown. But the thing is that besides those, we don't have any great mobility as Disc Priest. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to know, hey, do I really want to use Penance right this second and, you know, not really getting any benefit out of the movement speed increase? If you're in the heat of battle in PvE, this isn't really going to help you like on the surface. But like if you know like a mechanic's about to pop up, there's this one phase in the fight you're gonna have to move. Make sure you save Penance for a few seconds. I know you're gonna want to use it off cooldown, but just hold on to it for a second and use that initial speed burst to, you know, get out of the way of an AE or something. And same thing in PvP. I mean, if you're getting trained, just make sure you're using this very wisely. But if you use this and you don't have any other great means of mobility, like let's say that Angelic Feathers is on cooldown, or you didn't take Body and Soul so on and so forth, whatever the case may be, you're going to really miss out on this 30% movement speed increase if you don't have it when you absolutely need it to be there. Undoubtedly, Borrowed Time is my, well, I can't say my all-time favorite, but it is definitely in the top 3 on this artifact weapon as far as like what traits I absolutely love from this. Honestly, it would take, there's only one other ability in this artifact tree that I would have to say is more important than this one as far as like what you put your relics into, and we'll get to it here in a minute. But I mean, this, you can't go wrong. If you want to buff this to 30% on both of these, you can. It's awesome. I love this. Let's go ahead and read it. It applies atonement, well, excuse me, while applying atonement to a target, this reduces the cast time of your next smite or light's wrath by 15%, or reduces the channel time of penance by 15%. So yeah, this basically just makes penance just push out. You remember when I said about how penance does damage directly or does healing directly, or obviously can also do healing through atonement. The fact that it channels 15% faster is just awesome. And there's a nasty combo that you can do in the actual talent trees. It's castigation. It gives penance 1 additional tick as damage when channeling. You put 3 relics into this and make this channel time 30% faster. You're talking about some serious deeps. Penance would be putting out some serious damage. It gets 1 additional tick, plus it channels 30% faster. Dear God, that's gonna hurt. And you want to talk about some serious heals coming out from Atonement. So our next one is going to be Doomsayer. Okay, so Doomsayer is pretty awesome. I mean, this ability is, I'm not going to say that it's, you know, lackluster, because I mean, Rapture is like one of your best abilities, like by far. Like undoubtedly, without a doubt, one of your best abilities, hands down. Love that ability, love it, love it, love it to death. The thing about Doomsayer, though, is that it's not very long. I mean, you can put 3 points into this and make Rapture last 6 seconds longer instead of just the stock 3 that you get from here. But, I mean, Rapture is really one of those abilities. It's a 2-minute cooldown, and it's not really one of those abilities you're always going to be using, like, non-stop. Because it's really easy for you to spread Atonement around. I mean, honestly, it is. There's a lot of other tricks of the trade we'll talk about when we get to the talents. But Rapture is an ability that causes your Power Word Shield to not, you know, go on cooldown. So you can just spam Power Word Shields everywhere. Well, that basically means that you can just spam Atonements everywhere, because Power Word Shield also applies Atonement as well as granting that shield on targets. And so, honestly, though, I just don't think 3 relics is worth 3 more seconds of this. This is great. It's nice to know it lasts longer. So, you know, ergo, now you have 13 seconds instead of just the original stock 10. So, but, you know, don't get trapped in this whole idea of having, you know, Rapture on a, you know, 15 or 16 second duration. If you want to buff this to all 3 relics, you can. I'm just saying you got better options. Pain is in your mind. This bad boy is going to reduce the cooldown of pain suppression by 30 seconds. Now, the cooldown on pain suppression stock, like baseline, is 4 minutes. That's a long time. It's a very long time. I personally would have rather seen it be closer to 3 minutes, but I understand why Blizzard did it, because the fact that we have artifact traits now, if it was a 3-minute cooldown, then you could buff it to such a point that it'd be a 2-minute cooldown. And it can't be a 2-minute cooldown, because then it would be overpowered. Because then it would be like, I mean, aside from like Bop itself, it would be one of the biggest damage reductions that anybody, any class, any spec has across the board. Whether it's a tank, a healer, a DPS, it doesn't matter. 40% damage reduction from pain suppression, that's nice. That's real nice. But it's nice to know that you can actually reduce it down to 3 minutes stock baseline cooldown if you really wanted to. You can put all 3 relics into this, you can do that. It's just, again, much like Rapture, this is not really one of those abilities that I hope you're not spamming it off the cooldown. So I just don't really think 30 seconds is really going to, you know, make or break your spec, or really make and break your gameplay. So do it how you want. I'm just saying, when I look at this, I'm just like, nah, there's other better options in here. But it is nice to know Blizzard does give you an option to reduce this cooldown even further. And it's helpful to know that it's not a 4-minute baseline cooldown anymore. It is actually 3.5 minutes. This bad boy is number 1 on my list. Alright, let's read what this bad boy does, okay? Barrier of the Devotee. Increases healing done by Atonement by 100% for all targets inside your Power Word Barrier. Now, Power Word Barrier is a 3-minute cooldown that develops this massive dome of light, okay, in an area of effect This basically says that every target that has atonement applied to them has all the healing through atonement doubled while they're inside that barrier, which is glorious. This can literally save your skin in a raid or in a dungeon, especially if you're running like a 5-man dungeon, you're doing those mythic level dungeons or whatever. You got some big area you're trying to pull, you're trying to do a challenge mode, and you're trying to just race through a room of mobs and everything. This will be a really great addition. You can just apply atonement to everybody as you're going room to room, and as soon as the big fight breaks out, massive dome of light, and just go to town, man. Just start throwing out them penances, purge the wickeds, shadow word pains, however you're doing your damage, throw it out there, get this healing out. It's just glorious to have. And quick reminder for those of you that have actually looked at disc in depth already, there's an honor talent that actually allows you to reduce power word barrier from a 3-minute cooldown to a 2-minute cooldown. So that makes this bad boy really nice. That's why I said it's definitely in my top 3 also. I'd probably put this actually at number 1, to be frank. I just love this 1-point trait. Love it, love it, love it. Alright, so you guys want to talk about one of my other top 3 favorites? Is definitely going to be Vestments of Discipline. Now this bad boy, all it does really is when the activating fade reduces all damage you take by 10% for 6 seconds. Okay, so it isn't much, but for 6 seconds, 10% duration, reduction in damage taken, this can actually get buffed to 20%. This is really nice, man. I mean, it's a 30-second cooldown. It lasts 6 seconds. Discipline Priest, and this goes on top of their shield. So, I mean, this is a lot of damage reduction if you time it right, and you make sure to get your, especially if you spec into Clarity of Will, you'll have access to Clarity of Will, Powered Shield, Powered Barrier, plus your Fade. I mean, Discipline Priest can take a lot less damage for an extended period of time if they play it right. But, I mean, this basically means that you're going to be very smart about when you use Fade in areas that, there's obviously threat around. Obviously, if you're in PvE, Fade's just going to drop the threat anyway, and you're just, the target's going to get rid of you anyway. But in PvP, this can actually save your behind. I mean, you're knee-deep in Horde or Alliance or whatever your flavor of the month is, and you got a rogue that just went stealth, he's, 4 or 5 yards away from you, he just went to vanish, he's fixing to reopen up on you, so hit that Fade right then and there, and just prep for it, you know what I'm saying? Be ready for it, because here he comes. The same thing. If, you see, 4 or 5 Horde are off into the distance, and they're closing and closing in and closing in and closing in, just make sure that you just hit that Fade right before they open up and they try to do their burst. Because if you've got this buff to 20% through the relics, and they open up on you, you can really screw with their opener. And with your shield on top of you, plus there's reduction in 20% damage, the chances are of them breaking through your actual barrier in the first, or not barrier, but breaking through your powered shield in those first 6 or 7 seconds, it's pretty slim. So if you've got people peeling for you, this can literally save your bacon. Love this, love this, love this. It's not my top 3. I wish it was, though. If it had a number 4 spot, this would be it. Confession. Now what this does is increases either the healing or the damage done by penance by 15%. It can be buffed to 30 through the relics. So now you're thinking, okay, so we've got options to buff penance's healing or damage on chance through your Shadow Word Pains or your Purge of the Wickeds. Then you have a trait that increases penance's channel time by 15%, can be 30% with relics. And now you've got something that increases the damage or the healing directly into penance by 15 to 30%, however many points you want to put into it. I mean, you get the idea that they're buffing the crap out of penance. Again, that is your bread and butter as a Discipline Priest. You can use it to do damage baseline. If you don't take any talents, the only thing you can do with penance is damage directly. But there's a talent you can do to allow you to heal, so keep that in mind. But just look at this obvious setup. I mean, this whole artifact tree is completely designed around spreading damage with your dots, Purge the Wicked, Shadow Word Pain. You've got 2 or 3 traits that buff those, and then you've got at least 3 right off the top of my head that we just went over that buff penance either through channel time, through damage, on chance to increase damage or healing, and then you've got this obvious direct one that increases this damage or healing directly. So, hey guys, one more thing, last thing I want to go over with the traits. I forgot this when I was middle editing. I was like, ah, crap, I forgot to go over this one. So let's knock this out real quick. We'll wrap this up. Alright, so we got Sins of the Many. Now, this is going to increase the damage that you deal by 1% per ally that you have applied with Atonement. So this just, this goes right back to what we were talking about doing damage, or doing healing through your damage primarily. So the more atonements you have spread out, the more damage you're going to deal. Now, can anybody think of an ability in this artifact that this would actually really help out? Yeah, buddy. Light's Wrath. All the way. You get 10 people apply with Atonement, it already gets 100% increased damage for Light's Wrath because it's built into the ability. And then you add another 10% damage from this. I mean, Light's Wrath can do some serious damage. And I will add one extra thing on that. Don't be one of those guys that just uses the artifact ability as it comes off cooldown. It's not a smart way to play it. I mean, it's a 90-second cooldown. Make sure you're getting everything that you can out of it. Make sure that you're throwing around atonements as quickly as you can, as efficiently as you can. I mean, you obviously don't want to burn yourself out on mana, but make sure you manage your resources well. But make sure you maintain a steady stream of atonement. If you need to use Rapture for those oh-snap moments where you got to throw up shields ASAP, and also make sure it helps to get atonement spread around really fast. And then all of a sudden, once you get 12 to 15, maybe even 20, or God forbid you're able to get 30 people apply with atonement. I don't think that's possible, but if you were, and then you hit something hard with Light's Wrath, oh dear God, you're talking almost like if you have it, from Sins of the Many, also buffed with, having anywhere between 10 to 15 people applied with Atonement, you're going to be knocking on the door of about 2,000% spell power. And I'm dead serious. That is a ton of healing through Atonement. That's 1,000. If it does 2,000% spell power and damage, it'll do almost 1,000%. Because it's 40% of the damage you deal heals through Atonement. So almost half of that. So we're talking somewhere between the neighborhood of about 850 to 1,000% spell power healing for everybody all at once. And those can crit. So if those are critting, you're knocking on the door of like 1,600 to 2,000 healing through Atonement. So anyway, that does it for the artifact weapons, guys, for Dish Priest. I really like this. When I first went through it, I was like, man, this doesn't really have a lot of jaw-dropping like options. But really, it does. I mean, you can increase the channel time on your penance. You can deal a ton of damage through your dots, or you can do a bunch of damage through penance, or you can actually just spec purely into directly healing with penance, which is also a great option. Or you can spec down here, increasing the absorption of your shields by 30%. Or you can, increase the healing by Shadow Mend. Whatever floats your boat, man. I mean, it's really up to you as the player. So the first question you gotta ask yourself is, do I want to do damage, a lot of damage, and heal primarily through Atonement, or do I want to be one of those healers that has, I take penance and I use it to directly heal, and I have some direct healing options, but all I'm essentially doing damage-wise is I'm just throwing dots up and I'm just staying at the distance. Or you're gonna be one of those Disc Priests that's gonna kind of mix and match the two, because I mean, you can play it 2 or 3 different ways. It's just completely up to you. But anyway, that's it for the artifact weapon, guys. Love you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hit that thumbs up, that like button. Also hit that subscribe button. Be sure to check out my Twitter, my Facebook page, and also my Twitch page. Guys, I stream every day. For this week, I'm streaming every day. Classes start. I got to go back to college freaking next week. Man, non-traditional student, man, military. Yeesh. I hate being my age and going to college full time. So anyway, classes start next week, so I'm gonna be putting out these videos as much as I can between now and then. But then when classes start, the videos are gonna come, little less as often, but they will come. I promise. I'm gonna try and do at least 3 or 4 videos a week. But it also depends on my course load. If I'm, having to study for like midterms or something, that's obviously not going to be any videos going out that week. But I also have been thinking about just putting up some like 2 or 3 minute vlogs, just something, some thoughts I'm thinking about, some classes I looked at, or from maybe if I'm going over some talent trees. We might actually go away from these reviews for a while. Not like completely, but I just mean I might just start uploading some ideas and some thoughts. Maybe share my thoughts on a couple of different specs or a couple of ways you can play it, and we'll just do it that way. If that's what you guys want to do, great. If not, let me know in the comment section how you guys feel comfortable, because I want to keep bringing you guys content. I want to do it. I want to do it every day. But I got to be able to spare my time, you know, sparingly, so that way I can get my work done too. So, love you guys. Like I said, thumbs up the video. Check out my Twitter page. Let's get Blizzard on board with all these recommended changes for the hunters as well. Check out that video as well. Anyway, see you guys in the next video. Zera out.